Hello, it's Elizabeth Busby here, and welcome to Discerning Marriage. Today we are talking about, will your wedding night be awkward if you wait until marriage? No. No. The answer is no. This is the shortest YouTube video you've ever seen. Just kidding. Not kidding about the answer being no, but I am kidding about it being short. I have a lot to say about this. This is a topic that is very, very close to my heart because the idea that it would be awkward or you would be awkward or your wedding night would somehow be ruined or your intimate relationship with your spouse would be ruined if you wait is a lie from the actual pit of hell. And so I'm very passionate about dispelling that lie. I'm going to tease out the different questions that are going on here, okay? In a will it be awkward if I wait? Is our intimacy going to be this like super magical, amazing, awesome experience? Well, I think it depends on what your definition of a super awesome, amazing experience is and where you got that definition from. A lot of times, that definition comes from either pornography or somebody else's experience that you have somehow come into possession of. The reality is, in an ideal world, you wouldn't even know what somebody else's experience would look like. You would not necessarily have a standard that you're comparing it to. And so one of the things I want to do right off the bat is challenge anything in your heart that has an expectation and where that expectation comes from. And I want to be saying this with like the most tenderness that I can possibly portray through a YouTube video, because these are really, really sensitive places in people's hearts, right? To have acquired information that you're measuring your potential future experience against, already that is a really tender place. And so there can be a lot of shame there. There can be a lot of embarrassment there, a lot of pain there. But I don't think we can have this conversation about what a wedding night would be like, ought to be like, et cetera, without really confronting where you got these ideas in the first place. I'll leave it there for the sake of time, but I really want you to take that to prayer. Like, where did you even get those ideas of what it ought to be like to compare an experience that would be awkward? The next thing I want to talk about in this topic is the idea that anyone would be really good at anything without any practice and that they ought to be good at things without practice. Like, there is a learning curve with everything, but a learning curve isn't bad. If you want to learn how to play soccer and you've never done it before and you're like, what part of my foot hits this ball? Like, I have no idea. It's the laces. But if you've never played soccer, you have no idea. That doesn't make you a bad soccer player. That makes you new at something. And not knowing instinctively how to do it and needing to take time to learn doesn't make you bad at soccer. It means you have a learning curve, right? Anybody who's done anything new, playing soccer, playing the piano, pottery, cooking, and literally anything, it takes some time to be good at it. And there is going to be a learning curve with intimacy, regardless of anything. There's always going to be a learning curve. But that learning curve with intimacy is a lot more vulnerable and a lot more intimate than the learning curve with learning how to play soccer or cook a meal, because it is the most intimate, vulnerable thing we will ever do. And so you're going to have to go through the learning curve one way or the other. Going through that kind of a learning curve with someone who has vowed to love you no matter what is a remarkable game changer in the level of safety that you feel to learn the things that are necessary to have healthy emotional intimacy. So the idea that you would come into a relationship already knowing how to do something like this, it's literally just from the pits of hell, you guys. There's something so beautiful about the dance of learning that learning curve with the other person. And so the way we're thinking about this needs to be completely tipped over, right? It needs to be switched around. It's good and beautiful that there will be learning in something so intimate. And to be able to learn those things in the safest context possible is what God designed. There's no shame. There's no negativity. There's no anything negative. I mean, the word awkward has such a negative connotation. There's no room for any of that in that beautiful, selfless dance between a husband and a wife. The third thing I want to say here is that there is such a dramatic difference between that act of intimacy between a husband and a wife who have vowed to each other that they are loving each other freely. Nothing is forcing them to be there. No one's forcing them to be there. They are there totally free. They're giving all of themselves. They're holding nothing back, and they're receiving the other totally with nothing held back. There is a fidelity, like nobody is ever going to know me this way except you. And there is a fruitfulness. There's the ability for the world to be changed positively because of this love. That is so different than two people engaging in this kind of intimacy not married. It is not even comparable. So people who have only engaged in that intimacy outside of marriage are looking into a marriage, thinking about it all wrong, because you can't even compare. You cannot even compare. The act may look similar, but you cannot even compare what's going on there, because without the safety of the vow that the other person has given, there is no way to be totally vulnerable with that gift of yourself on both sides, both the man and the woman. There's just no way. So people looking from the outside who have had intimacy and are recognizing like, oh, there's a lot of vulnerability here, or oh, there's a lot of skill to it, or oh, there are techniques that you need to learn, whatever they have in their mind that they're saying these people who are married are, virgins on their wedding night, whatever, don't know, and they need to know to be able to have good intimacy. Let's take a step back here. What makes good intimacy? It is that safe gift of self so that you can be totally vulnerable, totally real, totally received, and then totally give. And there's no shame. There's nothing wicked that's like imposing something negative on what's going on here. And so for someone who has not experienced that intimacy in marriage, to be projecting the things that make intimacy good outside of marriage, it's not even the same. It's not the same. So that is, I think, an important thing to consider when you're considering what to do and how to live your life. Like, if you have experienced the kind of intimacy that exists between a husband and a wife in that marital embrace, that renewal of vows, you would not even be able to compare it to the act that is taking place outside of intimacy. Because that gift of self and the responsibility that comes with being able to love like that is only really realized in that marital embrace. So one of the things that people might be trying to get at with will it be awkward is, am I going to have the most mind-blowing physical experience of my entire life? The reality is, if you're both virgins, or if even one of you is a virgin, or honestly, if you guys aren't virgins, but now you're married and you're trying to figure out how to be super intimate in this actual full gift of self, the reality is probably not. It's probably not going to be the best intimacy. Look, if you were married for 50 years and you're looking back at all the intimacies you've ever had, is that very first one from a purely physical intimacy, like feeling, sensation, pleasure perspective, going to be the best? No, probably not, because everything takes time to learn. But the act of knowing how to have sex is not the same as how do I engage in intimacy with this other person within the safety of the bounds of our marital embrace. And that's going to take learning whether you've had sex or not before you get married, to be honest. Because again, like I said, it's a completely different experience when you're in that safety of the marriage vow. And that person that you're with is completely different from anybody else ever. So you're going to be learning each other. You're going to be learning how to give. You're going to be learning how to receive. And there are a lot of like practicalities to that, which absolutely need to be behind a paywall. They are not appropriate to talk about just on YouTube. But there's a lot of beauty in learning how to love well. But the goal, and this is very important, y'all, the goal is not the best physical pleasure you have ever had. The goal is to make a gift of yourself and to receive the gift of the other. And within that exchange of self, to taste a little bit of the glory of heaven. That's the goal. Is there beautiful physical pleasure to be had? Absolutely. In fact, one of the most astonishing things I think a pope has ever said ever is John Paul II, before he was pope, when he was Karol Wojtyła, in his book, Love and Responsibility, which is actually a philosophical look at what it means to love a person authentically, he talks about the goal of the marital embrace ought to be that the two of them climax at the same time, which takes a lot of effort on both parts because men's arousal curve is really steep and women's arousal curve is really not. And so to get the two of them climaxing at the exact same time together in that moment of embrace, that most intimate moment of embrace, I'm on YouTube, so I'm being mindful of how I'm speaking here, but you know what I mean? That takes a lot of work and effort and intention and practice on both parts, right? So is that going to be achieved on the wedding night? No, in all likelihood, probably not. But what you are going to be able to get on the wedding night, regardless of how much experience you've had, if you're both virgins or whatever, is that total gift and total receiving of the other and your little taste of heaven that is going to shoot forth into your life through the sacramental grace. And that is the goal here. That is what we're going for. Just the ability to give and receive. And you guys can, once you're married, can have all the practice you want to get to that ultimate goal that John Paul II talks about with that simultaneous climax. Practice away. But make sure that you're properly oriented, that the pleasure is not the goal. That is not the goal. The goal is that gift of self and that renewal of your free, total, faithful, fruitful vows that gives you a little taste of the glory that awaits all of us in paradise. Of course, I want to say that God is not a temporal being. He created us in his image, not the other way around. So I'm not saying that heaven is going to be like one big sex thing. What I am saying is that all pleasure in the world, all of it, from intimacy pleasure with your spouse to eating a really, really, really good steak to hiking a big 14-footer and seeing a sunset, all of the really beautiful things, the beautiful pleasures we get in life exist to show us that God just wants to give us intimate pleasure and infinite pleasure in heaven, not of a specifically sexual nature, but just pleasure in general. So that is always important to say. The last thing that I want to say here is Emily Wilson has a phenomenal video on this. And I'm going to link it in the description. It is absolutely worth watching. I'm pretty sure her husband's in that one. And if he's not, he pops in and makes a cameo. But man, that video, I saw it years ago, but it has really stuck with me. She does a phenomenal job of saying basically what I tried to say too, but in her own beautiful, unique way, because we're both unique people. Highly recommend you watch that video. And do not let anyone tell you that you need to have sex before marriage so your wedding night will be awesome. Please don't fall for that lie. We are cheering for you. We are cheering you on. We love you here at the Institute, and we just want your happiness. So I hope this was helpful. Until next time, stay close to the heart of Jesus and be not afraid. Bye.